Oh,
But
right.
that was a good tour. That
It was a
substation,
good.
that was a really good tour.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was just. It was nerve wracking
Yep.
getting down there.
We were not expecting that.
No, no, we were not. No, we were not. Have you been to Zambia since then?
I have not. I keep in touch with a couple of people there that I met that
Yeah.
year. So a
Okay.
bunch. Actually made a couple of friends who became very good friends in Zambia that year. So it's really great to think about, and and the other locations that Power Africa, IEEE Power Africa has gone to. I feel like so far the most interesting has probably been Zambia,
Yeah.
just because like South Africa, I heard was great as well, but South Africa is it's a very popular location,
Right.
more popular than Zambia. So having gone there and enjoyed it the way we did, yeah, that was amazing. I'm hoping I can go to some of the other West African countries. I've heard great things about Senegal, the Gambia, um, and which other one? Yeah, a couple of them. So
See, I
it's
was
on my
supposed to
bucket
go
list.
to the Gambia, Ivory Coast, Mali, and Senegal, I believe, back this year, to look at some projects and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was meeting with the ambassador of Mali the night that Trump announced the travel ban. Was supposed to leave for like 7 days.
No.
Yeah, I had an invitation from the ambassador to the Gambia to go down there. Like I was like making logistical plans. Like I'm
Yes.
literally doing this little presentation for these people, and then with the ambassadors there. So we're talking, and my phone starts blowing up. The NBA cancels, the MLB cancels, hockey cancels, football
Oh
cancels,
my
whatever it was,
gosh.
and it's like
Yeah.
Trump cancels travel to Europe. I'm like, well, okay. I'm
It all happened so quickly. I mean, obviously, we didn't respond as quickly as we should have. Like Greece immediately shut everything down, and they didn't see as many deaths as the U.S. did and is seeing. But yeah, that I mean, everything changed then. Everything
Yeah.
changed.
So that was my first time to go to West Africa. So how I got to the Power Africa conference in Zambia was I was going to go to an oil and gas conference in Nigeria, and they canceled it because they had some kind of instability rise up. So they canceled it, and so that's what ended up sending me to Zambia for the Power Africa conference. And I tell
Oh,
everybody,
well, I'm glad that happened, and that's why you
oh
came. I'm
yeah,
glad that you came.
and I tell everyone, I say if you go to Johannesburg, get on the plane, fly the hour and a half to Zambia to Livingston, and go. Like it was
Yeah.
incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So
So what were you gonna do in West Africa?
So we're working on well, so back then it's kind of changed now. We were there's a group I'm a part of or whatever here in Texas that meets with these African ambassadors, mainly Western African ambassadors, talking about what they need in their country. And so we were going to go down there to look at some of these projects they were talking about, and that's part of. I won't name names in the talk today, but I'm going to kind
Yeah.
of talk about some of the problems, especially if you're a smaller African nation that you're going to face, and how at least I believe that we should look at those issues. And so we're going to look at some projects and tour the countries, and as going there, it's not half the battle, but it's a big portion of it. Just saying that you've been there is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a perfect segue into our discussion today. So, welcome Ryan to the Lifeline. This webinar is being hosted by a professional Africa. We'll find out more about what Ryan's doing, but a little bit about myself. My name is Urena Onyewuchi. Um, I have a PhD in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech, and I specialized in asset management of power systems. Since then, in addition to asset management, I've done power quality, smart metering, energy management, and quite a few things in the power field. And it's always been my interest to help or work in the African development space. I chaired the IEEE Power Africa Conference in 2016. It started planning it in 2014, and then started after I chaired it, I continued to supervise and steer it, and make sure that it was a successful annual technical conference. And it has been successful. We've helped to bring over 200 young girls, or exposed over 200 young girls in different parts of Africa to STEM careers. A lot of them beforehand didn't think that they could do engineering. And so some of the sessions that we had with other women in power definitely helped them to see that they could succeed in a STEM field. Um, we've had a number of webinars this year, from healthcare to power, and so on. And actually, today's webinar is going to be the last one for the year, where we're looking at how do we attract U.S. Investors to meet African needs. What are we doing wrong in Africa? What's China doing right? And so on. And so we're happy to have Mr. Ryan Ray Sr., who is a member of the board of advisors for, what is it, George Bush?
Excuse me. Yeah, the George H.W. Bush Foundation for U.S.-China Relations.
Yes. So he has a wealth of knowledge. He's been to Africa. He's tried to do some work in Africa as well. So it's just going to be great to hear from him and learn from him today. So Ryan, tell us a little bit about your interest and background in Africa.
Yeah, so Africa holds a very special place in my heart. We were talking before we went into the formal part of this about meeting you. So let me go back so Africa is the first continent other than North America I've been to. I've been to other countries in Central America, but that was my first exposure to a new continent, was Africa. And so because of that alone, it kind of holds a, and I'm going to say this once, so I have to say it again. When I say Africa, I hate saying Africa, because once you learn about Africa and you begin to fall in love with Africa, you realize that you do it an injustice by calling it Africa, because it's such a rich culture and diverse. So I say Africa, understanding that I'm doing it a disservice, because you can't encompass everything in that one word. It's a continent, not a country. And that's an important thing for people to, obviously the listeners understand, but for this side of the table to understand. So I met a gentleman at a conference in 2013 in West Virginia. And I said, hey, I want to come to Africa. We want to do work in Africa. I'd always wanted to work internationally. So I was agnostic on where. I knew Europe probably wouldn't work for us because of what we do. There's a lot of competitors in Europe that are probably more established. So Central America, South America, Africa, places like that, maybe Middle East, depending on where you're at, might be opportunities. And so I had met with some folks in the Middle East and Africa and whatnot. And so I met this gentleman. I said, hey, I want to come to South Africa, where he's from. He said, okay, great. So I sent him an email. Hey, when can I come down? He never responded. So a year later, I see him at the conference, and he gives a presentation about why. And he might be here. I sent him the links. I don't know if he's here or not. But Muzi, if you're here, hello. I saw him again, and he says he gives a presentation about needing U.S. people to come help these projects in South Africa. So I waited and said, hey, I want to come. He goes, okay, great. So I sent him an email, this time before the conference ended. And about 2 days go by, and it's the last night of the conference, and I see him. I said, hey, I want to come down. He goes, okay, great. I said, no. I really want to come down. And if you don't come down, I'll do a speech next year about why you didn't have me down 2 years in a row. And he kind of laughed. I kind of laughed. And I said, no, I'm serious. So 2 months later, I was down in South Africa.
Wow.
But so here's what happened. This is important. And this is kind of set the tone for this conversation. We're sitting on his back patio. And I said, why would you not invite me down? He goes, because everyone was saying that they wanted to come. Everyone was telling me that. No one really wanted to come.
Right.
And so I thought you were one of them. And so now he's one of my best friends in the world. He's at this. I work from home. He stayed in my home right up here with my I have a wife and 4 kids. So he's one of my best friends. But you know what? It took that dedication, that perseverance, and the actually willing to do something for that to happen. Otherwise, he just thought I was like everyone else. I was just someone talking. I didn't really care. And so that was my first trip in Africa, was in 2014, if I got my date right. And then I think we met in 2016, we said. And so I'd been a handful of times there, giving presentations. And so anyways, so that's kind of my background. And that was really probably the best way for me to get introduced with international stuff. It was because I learned that there's a lot of people that talk about international stuff, but they're not really committed to doing it.
Yes,
correct. In committing to doing it doesn't ensure success, but you have to understand that you have to start. And so what I tell people now is, I have a passport, I'll go. Where you want to go? And that's how I got tied up with the China stuff, quite frankly, was I talked about some of my experience with Africa and what I was doing there. And they said, would you bring that to China? We're standing fishing in South Texas. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm going in 2 weeks. I said, I got a passport, I'll go. Same line. That's my line. I got a passport, I'll go. And I didn't get to go on that trip, but guess what? by November, this was last year, so from July to November, I was in China. And so having the willingness to say that, not only to say that you're going to do it, but to do it, that goes a long way. And it goes a lot from the US side, and it goes a lot from the Africa side. Because when you get on that plane and you fly, you know this, you fly 10, 15 hours. That's
Yeah.
dedication, especially when you're flying
Yes.
coach. First class, okay, maybe. But if you're flying coach, that's dedication. And now if
That
you
is
got to wear a mask
dedication.
for 15 hours, you're serious and you separate yourself right there. So it
Mm,
doesn't ensure success, but that's it. Another thing I'll say real quick, I'll kind of move on, is that, my international relationships, the ones that I've been able to develop, me and you don't talk regularly, like weekly or anything, but we keep in touch so we know
mhm.
each for 4 years. We keep in touch on and off. Um, the international community is unique, and because you understand that you're doing something that not everyone is doing. And so you kind of have this bond with people about, oh man, I got in this conversation with this ambassador the other day. And well, most people aren't talking to ambassadors, or most people aren't talking to countries about how to fix these problems. So you kind of build these bonds, these friendships where people can share relationships and experiences and stories that just the average people don't know. So I think it's a beautiful thing that I love. So, anyways, one more comment I want to make, because as you know, I like to try to call it like I see it.
Announced that name
And so,
and number to her. Please call this
uh
and confirm
Sorry, we have
the fireworks.
someone.
Please call them. The one security man.
Okay.
there we go. One other thing I like to say is that, you know, for the rest of this conversation, A, I love Africa, but B, I have a wife and 4 kids. And if we're talking about Zambia, South Africa, China, I don't care. The basis in which I'm a free market capitalist, I don't apologize for that. And how I think about it is this: whatever country we're talking about, whether it's the U.S. or, again, the Gambia, there's a man there with a wife and 4 kids. And I want to make sure that we're bringing opportunity so that he can feed his kids, he can clothe his kids, he can have a house for his kids, he can have power for his kids, water for his kids, stuff like that. And that's the basis for how I view international deals and relationships. And so, part of the problem that we have in the U.S. and abroad is this: well, you believe this, I believe this. Well, okay, well, I'm here to make sure that those things happen. That's what I want to do the best way I can, and then we can talk about what we think are the best ways. So, um, you may continue, or do you want me to stop there?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I like how you said that just actually flying to Africa or to, whatever part of Africa or to China separates people. And I was just going to say that that's very true because when I was getting my PhD, I had an opportunity to go to China for a summer and teach students for a whole lot less money than I would have gotten but if I had chosen to work in an oil company who had given
Yeah,
me an offer for that summer. But then, going to China and spending 3 months there completely by myself, and then coming back, it opened a huge door. The first job I got out of school, Corning Incorporated, one of the things that attracted them to me was the fact that I had been to China by myself and they have global plants and they wanted someone who was open to travel and who already had some experience with traveling, and it definitely did open a door. So that's like you said, that's a big deal when you sit in an airplane and you're going and it's not really just for pleasure but for business. that's
right,
that's that's dedication.
right.
That is dedication. Yeah.
So, since go ahead, sorry. You have something?
Oh, no, I was going to ask, what you've learned over the years.
Yeah,
All the
that's where I
stuff
was
that
going.
you,
Yeah. So,
uh-huh.
I've learned a couple things. One is when you name that you've gone to a country, I don't care what country it is in the world. If you name that you've gone to a country as an American, everyone wants to know what is going on. Like, what's it like there? Did you enjoy it? Now, obviously, I'm from America, so I can't speak to what it's like from the opposite side. But Americans have a very keen interest in what is it like in Zambia, South Africa, China, wherever you go, Nicaragua, Honduras, other places I've been. Um, Part of that is you have to understand from the American perspective, our news does not cover foreign countries. If you turn on Fox or MSNBC or CNN or whatever one you like, you're not getting a lot of African coverage, right? Unless it deals with the U.S. You might get a little bit of China coverage, but that's only because it's dealing with the U.S. You're not going to get a very broad scope of what's going on in the world. If you go to South Africa and you turn on the news, well, guess what? America's in the news, right? So, and so Americans are genuinely curious about what is going on in these places. Now, that's good, bad. So Americans want to know what's going on. The bad part is they have a very distorted view of what's going on because they don't get a lot of news coverage. Okay, so if all you're
Mhm.
getting about China is what the mainstream media here in the U.S. is telling you, then you have a very, very small view. Or if the only time you hear about Africa is, when there's some atrocity going on, a very
Right.
right. So they're kind of skeptical, especially of emerging markets, third world nations. They're very skeptical because the coverage they get is very small and it's usually nothing good. But with that being said, Americans are entrepreneurial at heart. They're wanting to go, and they're good. Generally speaking, they're givers. They give a lot of money to donations. So what they want to do is they want to know what's going on, and they want to know if it's a place that they can trust. Could they send their kids there on vacation? Could they go visit? You could ask a lot of weird questions like, "Do you feel safe?" And in some parts of Africa, just like some parts of the states, I feel safe. Some parts I don't feel safe. It depends on what I'm doing, where I'm at, right? I try to have those conversations, um, and try to deconstruct it as best I can. But the fact that Americans, I think maybe from the outside, what I've heard is people say that when Americans come on vacation, the Americans act like they know it all. Well, that's a lot of bravado because Americans don't know it. I think I think they feel inadequate because they get there, they realize they don't know anything, like they don't know nothing because our news never talks about it. So it's kind of hard to know. But they actually are interested, especially when they're talking one on one, because they want to know what is going on, in these countries, and so those are that actually is opportunistic from the African side of things because people are interested in what's going on in your country. Maybe not to the scale that you are, obviously, but they are interested. And so being able to thread that needle and attract investors is a little bit, it's not easy. I don't want to say that, but maybe easier than you perceive because on one hand, you might have an American investor who's never heard of your country. However, as soon as he does, he's interested, right? And so him not knowing about what's going on in your country doesn't mean he's not interested. It means he doesn't know. And so we have to
Right.
start
I
that
see.
process.
Uh-huh. I see. That's great. And I would love for you to talk about something really quickly before we go back to the conversation for today is how did you end up where you are right now? What in terms of career path, how did you choose? Or I know sometimes we don't really choose, things kind of happen
Right.
to us, right? So how did you get here? Like if you're talking to a high school student who wants to know, you know,
Yeah.
what do I do after I graduate from college or from high school? How did you get here?
So, early on in my career, I knew I wanted to work internationally, not necessarily live internationally, but work internationally on projects and stuff. And at the time, it wasn't really clear, how to do that. I was kind of promoted pretty high when I was younger, so understanding what I know about now, the world, and in the end, it's not the same. But I knew I wanted to work internationally because I really believed in this one premise was, I'm gonna pick a country right now. Brazil. Okay, I'll say Brazil. I don't know what the economy of Brazil is doing. Okay, and I don't care for today's conversations, but it's doing something. I know what the economy in the U.S. is doing. So as many of those different economies that I can work in, the better chance for long-term success I have, right? Because if I'm working in four different African nations, three of those might be down, but one of them might be up. So for me, it was very much a globalistic, like, how can we work together to ensure that we're building wealth by working in multiple nations? Because if you're dependent on the U.S. economy, then you're dependent on the U.S. economy. But if you can work with multiple nations, well, then all of a sudden you can build out this machine, if you will, where you can do trade with this country, you can do trade with this. So what I did was, I wanted to work internationally. I wanted to make sure how that would work itself out. And I've kind of changed my stance since what I've articulated a minute ago. I started a show called the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, which you came on, right?
Yes.
So I'd been to Africa before. I'd already started kind of going the groundwork. And then I said, I want to talk to energy leaders around the world. How do I do that? Well, let me start a show that acknowledges that they're an energy leader when they come on and put global in front of it. And that's what I did, Global Energy Leaders Podcast. And I did 100 episodes of that podcast. It was, had a lot of fun doing it. And I met people all over the world. I can't remember if we had you on before the Zambia or after Zambia, but
I think it
we
was
had you on
after.
after. Okay, had you on after.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be better at the conference. Yeah, and so I met people all over the world, and some people I still talk to, some of them I don't. But that really opened up my world because and on that show, what I did was I'd bring the guest on, I'd let them speak. I wouldn't say anything. I would just say, "What do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" And I'd let them be. They're the expert. Let them come on and talk. And so that kind of gave me some credibility. And then I said, okay, well, I need to focus here on some of the state stuff I'm working on. So I created a new show called the Textile and Gas Podcast. Very niche, very specific. Textile and gas, right? And so we start talking about that. I have one now that's more back to geopolitical energy stuff I do with someone else. And so I like to talk, obviously. I like to talk to people more than anything else. And so how do I talk to people? How do I get in front of them? And the final thing I say is that if you're going to, if you want to work internationally or wherever you want to work at, you have to decide kind of where your target is. So you have a PhD. I don't have a college degree, and I don't have a dog in the hunt on which of those is right or wrong. For me, that's
Mhm.
not right. For you, that's right. And I'm not trying to encourage or discourage education. I'm saying I know that think tanks and high academic institutions aren't going to probably call me up for my opinion. That's okay. However, I have a competitive advantage because I would rather talk to the people on the ground and get
Mhm.
that nuance that maybe the think tank or the academic institutions aren't going to get. Now they're going to
Yeah.
have advantages because they're going to have things that I'm not going to have. So I understand that there's a give and take. And for me, I like to kind of play that role of the man of the people, if you will. I want to be with the people, do what's right for the people, and try to bridge that gap to government instead of starting with government and coming down. And so you kind of have to work through those. Where do you want to be? How do you want to position yourself? It's not easy. It's something you got to work on. And talking for me is the best way to do that because I talk to you. I'm gonna learn from you. You're gonna tell me something that no one else is gonna tell me, and so I can take that nugget, I can store it, then I can use it later on down the road. I hope that answered
So,
your question.
yeah, yeah. How did you market your show? So when you started out with the Global Energy podcast and the rest of them, how did you market your show and get the right people to watch it?
Yeah. So what I did with that was I had one person in my network who was a pretty decent name, and so and he had agreed to come on, and so I used that leverage early on, and so um, you know, podcasting now 4 years later is a little bit different than it was back then. But back then, not a lot of people were doing it, so you could get a little bit better responses. Now you have to have kind of proven yourself. So if you want to start a podcast, what I would say is, who is the biggest person in your network that you can get to come on, right? And so that's the best way to market it because no one knows who Ryan Ray is, but they know who maybe Gregory Zuckerman with the Wall Street Journal is, or Bill Bishop with the Sound. They know who these people are. They don't know who I am. So I need their network to help me out. So that's what I've always tried to do is who is the biggest name in my network that will come on that can talk about this topic, leverage their credibility to give me credibility because they are the expert. They're the person who knows
Yeah.
more than me. And so that's what I've done. And I think it's worked out well because um, if you want to position yourself, so I'll give you a little inside baseball here. On some of our shows that we do, I talk more, and on some of them I talk less, and that's very strategic. Like so, Energy Week podcast. If you listen to that I kind of play the play-by-play person. I kind of walk us through the articles, and I tee up Ellen, let her answer the question. I let her give the first answer. Usually, sometimes I'll throw my 2 cents in, but I'll let her kind of answer the question. She's better of an expert on those topics than I am, so I kind of tee her up to let her talk. And then on other shows, someone else does that for me. So it depends on the role. And so I think these are things that you have to the Global Energy Leaders podcast, for example, I didn't. I just kind of teed everyone else up. What do you think? What do you think? Why is this? What about this? Do you agree with this? I tee that person up. Do you want to be a thought leader? Do you want to be a moderator? Do you want to be someone who's just working with people? And those are all questions that you have to ask. And I like to play a bunch of roles, if that makes sense. Sometimes I like to talk a lot. Sometimes I like to listen and just kind of move the conversation down the road. So self-awareness is key, and it's tough. There's the conference that we met at, the Power Africa Zambia conference. I'll I'll be honest with you. Most of those technical papers I did not understand. Okay, most of those technical papers I did not understand. But what stuck out to me to this day is they showed a picture of a woman walking down a street with a bundle of sticks on her head, and they said, "How do we get this woman working?" Online within 5 years. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know anything about this battery technology, but I know what they're selling with this idea is not reasonable. So I can deconstruct that and we can have a conversation about that. I cannot talk about battery technology. I will be a buffoon. I even know, I mean, I've got double A's right here. I know how things work. So, understanding what your limitations are as well. So if we're going to talk about something very technical, I'm going to defer to you because you are far greater at that than me. If you want to talk about geopolitical trends or maybe how to get investors in Africa, there's a level I can talk about that. But if you start saying, well, how do you overcome this law in a certain country? Okay, well, I can't go there. So I got to know where I can and can't talk and not sound, I can sound halfway decent.
Great, great. What is the tech model in Africa? You wanted to talk about the tech model in Africa. What is that to you?
Yeah, the small tech model is what I like to call. I think I put tech, yeah. And so if you look at in the US, what you see is the big companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, whatever, they are always buying up small tech companies. And what happens is that there's a lot that fail, obviously, but these companies go out and they develop WhatsApp. Okay, WhatsApp was bought by Facebook. Okay, Facebook did not develop WhatsApp, and that's an important thing to understand. WhatsApp was developed by people who are willing to go out to try the market. Start off small is a relative term. Start off small, and then eventually they grew it to this international platform that is the greatest text app in the world. I love WhatsApp, by the way. All my American friends that are listening, please start using WhatsApp. I try to push them to it. I don't know why they won't. I hate text messages. I love WhatsApp. But eventually, what happened was Facebook went and bought WhatsApp, right? So if you would have went and pitched to Facebook, hey, in Africa, text messaging is expensive. It doesn't work really well. No one can afford it. You guys should go build a platform for that. It would not have been WhatsApp. I don't know what you think about WhatsApp. I think it's great, but it would not have been WhatsApp. It would have been something different and probably worse. But because WhatsApp started small and grew into it, then Facebook took it over. Then you have this beautiful platform that works really well. So when we talk about Africa, there is, and probably at the conference we were at, I know every nation seems to have these big grandiose slogans, Power Africa 2022, or every home with a heater by 2075, or well, okay, I'm not against those ideas, but what does that mean? When you say we want to, and I don't remember the Power African slogan, but Power Africa 2035, maybe is what it was, or South Africa. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, I know you want to put power into African nations, or this African nation, South Africa, by 2035, but what does that mean? Now, compare that with, we need 1,000 solar panels in this village. I know what that means. You need 1,000 solar panels in this village. And so when I talk about the small tech model, and 1,000's relative number, what I'm saying is how do we message stuff to where when you're talking to U.S. investors, they can actually sink their teeth into it? Because Power Africa 2035, I'm all for it, but you're not going to attract people that don't have the time and the energy and the resources to go through and to comb through all these documents and to figure out what it is. But you know what will attract them? Something that they can understand. So if you're a African nation, and I talked about this a minute ago, that maybe doesn't have the celebrity status as a Nigeria or a South Africa, you're not a big name. You mentioned the Gambia earlier. The Gambia, we'll take that as an example. You're the Gambia. Most Americans probably don't know the Gambia or where it's at, and it's just unfortunate reality. Well, if you're the Gambia and you have a Power 2035 initiative, A, people don't know where you're at. B, they're not going to read your initiative. Okay. But if you're the Gambia and you say, we need to get X done, and X is a very clear thing, guess what? You can sell that. People will buy into that idea. You need 1,000 solar panels or 10,000 solar panels or whatever it is, or you need used cars. I don't know. The investments are endless, but put it into a context that people can understand, because then the process is quite simple. Hey, Bob, you do this in Africa, they need this. The questions that they're going to ask are a lot different than if you have these big grandiose slogans and ideas. And I understand why those are out there. You have all these NGOs, you have the World Bank, all these big conferences, all these big political types that are going back and forth. That's great. But if you want to attract those type of people, talk about China, those type of people, that's what you attract by that. If you want to attract small people that will come in and do these projects for you, you have to change your messaging. So if you're a country that's struggling to bring in investors, the small tech model is simply saying, how do you take something that's bite-sized that a small, medium-sized business in the U.S. can come and get done? And then once you have that, what I'm calling a win, that victory is done, is complete, everyone's happy, do it again. Because just like with WhatsApp, the big companies are going to look to your country and go, oh, okay, why are all these little guys making money? The big guys hate when the little guys make money. Like that's they want to make that money, right? But what we've seen historically in Africa is that the big guys come in, and the way that they structure their contracts, the way that they do their deals, are not favorable to the citizens of African nations, right? They may be favorable to the political elite, but they're not favorable to those on the ground. So here's what we're saying is, let's meet in the middle. Let's attract smaller than these large multinational companies that come in. Let's have specific goals, very tangible goals, and duplicate that process over and over again. And eventually, by the time the big multinationals want to come in and do this work, you won't need them as much. You will need them eventually because we need those big companies, but you won't need them the same way you do now. So that's that's kind of what I'm saying from the tech industry. Start small, de-risk the process, and we break that down some more in a minute, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So you talk about the well, we have next on here hard conversations, but then I still want to touch on and go as specific as you can, but I know it's still going to be general because we're not mentioning any names. But let's just say not just the nation, but a few startup companies in the country, in an African country. Where can they go? How can they meet? If for the ones who are serious, how can they meet the investors?
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a story I will tell. I won't use the nation. And if they're listening, they'll know. I hope they're not listening. But back, I was meeting with some folks from a nation, and they said that they wanted some hospitals built in their nation. I said, okay,
Okay.
well, hospitals is a pretty tall order. And at the time, the U.S. economy was going really well. I said, you're probably not going to have a hard time getting people to come over there. And they told the story of why they wanted the hospital. Now, they have a lot of reasons why, obviously, but there's one story about a certain person having a certain type of accident, and it really highlighted the lack of medical infrastructure that they had. Okay, very sympathetic to all that.
Yeah.
What I told them was, I said, this specific problem that you're having, I can solve that pretty quickly. Because it was a very unique thing that medical treatment you could get. I can solve this for you. And they said, well, that's great, but we really want the hospitals built. I said, no one's going to build the hospitals. Let's solve this problem and show that you're going to pay, that you're going to hold up your end of the deal, that you're going to bring forth, that I'm going to do it. And then guess what? The hospitals won't be a problem. Now, we've talked to some large groups here in the U.S. about building the hospitals and trying to work that process. But that's just a practical example of we could have started very small and built it out pretty quick because there's medical dollars all over the place, right? When you start talking about building the hospitals, guess what? There's all kinds of questions about regulation and can a U.S. doctor work over there and all this stuff, and it gets bogged down. But there's actually small things that we could have done for a long time now that would have gotten us a lot further than where we are right now, which is we've done nothing. And so those are the type of examples I'm talking about. So I use solar panels because I'm talking about energy, but it could be something in the medical field where you might need hospitals. I want you to have hospitals. I'm not against that. But if your problem is really you have iron deficiency and you need iron pills, well, let's get the iron pills down there first. Let's start with that. And so you talk about how to attract investors from the African side. That's it. Find people who are willing to work with you and do the deals. The person that's willing to come over. I don't think that's as hard as maybe people are led to believe. There's people like myself all over the country who are willing to come. They're willing to do what we found from our side is when we get there, the ask is too big, right? It's not. It's I want these hospitals built, and it's like, well, okay, but no one's to come build a hospital, and if they do, the terms are not going to be what you want them to be, or if they are what you, or to bring the Chinese angle is if the terms are, if you want the hospital built really cheaply, very quickly, the Chinese will come do it for you, but they're going to take from you something that you will never get back. So why not start this process where we can start small and work big? And so earlier we talked about people coming down, right? One of the questions I forgot to mention is when I go to Africa and I go to a country, I talk about doing business here. One of the questions I get asked is, have you made a dollar yet? Have you made a dollar yet? And if you say no, guess what happens? Okay, whatever. If you say yes, it changes everything. Starting small answers the have you made a dollar yet, right? And it's not about, and I want to be careful here because it sounds like I'm saying, hey, we should be just wasting dollars. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that there's just simple things that we can get accomplished that start the transaction process, start the trust process, and get us on the road. So if you're looking for people, if you're in Africa looking for people that are willing to come work in the U.S., there's we got the West Texas Chamber of Commerce here in Houston. The West Africa Texas Chamber of Commerce here in Houston would be a good resource. There's groups like that, and then I can just tell you because of I know that there are big organizations who would love to go that aren't considered multinationals, but big medical institutions that would love to go, but they kind of know, okay, here we go. It's going to be, are we going to go through all this process? And so we were looking at a country, these hospitals, and one of the people that was involved started looking at it. He goes, well, from his experience, he goes, it looks like the NGOs have too much influence. They can't really make a decision. And so it turns out, I think we'll see, but maybe he's right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's a drum I want to beat over and over again is that you can find people, but when you find them, you have to get things going, and it can be very simple and very small. And I know it sounds crazy, but me and you talked a few months ago. When you get off a plane in America, so if we're both in Texas. If we were to fly to Los Angeles to get off the plane, I've been there a couple times. You probably have as well. Okay, and you're driving down the street. I don't know the local fast food joints, but if I'm driving down the street and I get off the plane, I drive down the street and I see a McDonald's and I see a Tom's Tacos. I've never had a Tom's Tacos, and unless I'm really craving a taco, I'm probably gonna go to McDonald's because I know what I'm getting. Right? I know what I'm getting at McDonald's. It's not great, but it's McDonald's. I know what I'm getting. I don't know Tom's Tacos from me. It might be the worst taco in my life. I don't have a clue. Same thing here with Africa. You want to do deals, you got to become closer to McDonald's. People can trust you. They know what they can get. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the best, but they know what they can get. If you're Tom's Taco, people are going to be reluctant. And so how do we start that process? So I'll quit rambling.
So it's like you build a brand, you need to be specific with your ask and start small. And then you're also saying, start small and try to be successful as a small company or startup, and then you can attract investors that can help you continue to meet those goals, and then you would grow them over time.
Right. So there's a movie in the U.S. called The Patriot. It came out many years ago. Yeah. And in the movie, Mel Gibson is teaching his kids to shoot, and he says, "Aim small, miss small." And I think that's what I'm trying to say here. Aim small, miss small. So if me and you are going to do a deal, and I'm going to sell you a package of water bottles, we aim small. So if we miss, I mean, I can't overcharge you that much for water bottles, right? And if you don't buy the water bottles and you leave me hanging and you'll pay me for them, the aim small, miss small. When you talk about building hospitals and infrastructure, stuff like that, you're aiming big, and you're likely to what then? You're likely to miss big. And so if you're not having problems, go big or go home. I'm all for that. But if you're struggling, well, let's go back to the basics. Aim small, miss small. It doesn't mean that you have. I'm saying water bottles. Small is a relative term. Each country, each district has to determine what small means for them. I'm more pushing back against these global type, big, grandiose slogans that I don't know what they mean. And then I read 30 pages of documents and I still don't know where my opportunity is. Okay, you need to put in, you need to add this much power to the grid by 2035. Okay, great. Well, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't like. I mean, you may build a power plant. Well, okay.
So we need to simplify the ask. Simplify so that you don't have to go through 30 pages to understand. And that's right too, because once I was considering getting into the selling power meters in Nigeria. And so I was going through the contract or the RFP, and like you said, it was really long. And then when it came down to what you'd need to get started, it was you had to go to this organization in Nigeria and get a sign off, then go to this other one and get approval, then go to this one. And so by the time I read through the whole thing, it just became unattractive to me because it was just too much to get done.
So who is that going to attract? Let's answer that question. That's going to attract a company that can pay people to sit around all day long and read that stuff, right? And if you can pay people to sit around and then to go to all those offices, those are people who have big lawyers on staff, big accountants on staff. The deal they're going to strike with you is not the same deal me and you are going to strike with them, right?
Right.
That's where these nations lose the leverage, because you bring in a company that's like, okay, well, listen, we'll come in, but if you want us to come in and do this, we're going to have to bring in all of our own people. We're going to have to do this, whatever it is. That's where the leverage is lost right there, because you were qualified to do that. You could have got that done probably, but you're like, oh God, it's 16 trips to Nigeria to get it done. Yeah. And let me ask you this. What is your experience with African nations and sunset clauses? Is that something that you see over there a lot?
I'm not sure. I haven't done a lot of business deals in Africa. I've been more in the education space. So I can't answer that question, but what do you think about it?
Well, I think that's the next thing here, is that if you're saying, okay, aim small, miss small, how do you aim small? You aim small by sunset clauses. So I don't know enough about the power meter situation, but obviously there's a lot of fears on both sides, from Nigeria and your side potentially, about what's going on here. But sunset clauses for laws are a beautiful thing, because you can come in and say, listen, we need to put in whatever the power meters are, 1,000,000 power meters or whatever it is, over the next 5 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a set of laws for these initial people to come in, that are very clear, they're very cut, they're very dry. There's no ambiguity. They're going to tell you how they're going to get paid. They're going to tell you how we're going to handle labor disputes. They're going to tell you all this stuff. And then those laws expire. And here's what that means: that once these first set of investors come in and they have their 5 years to do their project, they're protected because we want to protect them. But then the next set that comes in, they don't get the same benefit, because you know what's going to happen? We're going to realize we missed this. We should have added this. We need to change this. And so then we have a new set of sunset clause. So you can protect investors by giving sunset clauses, sunset laws that expire. They're still protected, but then the next set of people that come in, they don't get the same benefits. So you might overdo the benefits in the first group, but the second group, you don't have to. And it allows you to tweak your laws nice and slow. You can respond to things as they come up, instead of trying to make a big wide sweeping policy change and then someone comes in and they dupe you because they thought about it in a way that you hadn't, and they took advantage of you. Now you can make them very small, very unique. So in your power meter example, you could have said, okay, I don't know all the particulars, but you could have said, okay, investors who want to do this project, here is the set of rules and regulations that we're going to make for this specific project. And you can make those where they're very clear, very, very cut and very dry, but they also don't last forever. So you don't have to take them off the books. They go off the books on their own. They have a limited time to go on. So if you're an investor and you want to do that project, you understand that you get the project done in a certain amount of time, or you lose that protection, right? Yes. And so it also puts a sense of urgency on the investor as well.
That's great. That's a new one for me. Thank you so much for sharing that. To kind of go towards the close of this webinar, what will get us over the top? So you talked about relationships, content, transparency, all of that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, yeah, so I would say, if you're in Africa right now and you're trying to say, okay, how do we attract investors? The first thing I would say is, how do we start closing deals today? Whatever, if you need power poles, I don't know what your needs are, so I can't say. What do we need today? What can we get done today? And in your network, you have the ability to start doing that. How do we start closing deals today? Closing deals today is what brings people to want, because let me tell you from the US side of things. If I call you up and I say, hey, guess what? I struck a major deal down in Gambia, and I'm going to be selling them power poles for 5 years. Well, you might not be in the power pole business, but you're in the, chicken feed business. You're going to go, well, they have chicken feed down there? Yeah, they got chickens down there. We mean, everyone's got chickens. Like, well, can I sell some chicken? I don't know. Maybe I can work you on this deal, right? So closing deals brings on, because people, entrepreneurs, they're around other entrepreneurs. So how do you start closing deals? Making sure that your entrepreneurs are obviously cutting you fair deals. That's a given. But if they're cutting you a fair deal, making sure that you're paying them on time, you're answering their phone calls, you're answering their emails, all of the things that the Americans are concerned with. Do not let those things creep into your deals. Be the one that's different, because if you're the one that's different, people will want to come work with you. And when people come work with you, you're going to get the best that there is, right? And so if you're working with Americans or Europeans or whoever, make sure you're paying them on time. Make sure the contracts are clear. Make sure there's no ambiguity. Make sure you're being honest. Those are things that are very simple. They're very practical. And again, we don't have to be grandiose. They're very practical steps. If I hear of someone who's doing business in the country, I'm already asking, how do I get that? How do I get in? Like, what's going on? Like, how does that work? Is there customs? What about taxes? I'm going to pay taxes down there. Is there local content laws? How do you make this process easy for me to come into your country? Now, you're afraid, and we hadn't talked about this much, so I won't mention this. From the African side, you're afraid that I'm going to come in and I'm going to steal local African jobs. I don't want to steal local African jobs. You know why? Because I don't want to have a bunch of employees. Right? I can't afford that much employees. Partnering with small to medium businesses, that's how you win for Africa as well, because they can't afford to have thousands upon thousands of employees all over the world. They're trying to manage what they got, so they got to partner with you. So make it fair for them, and they're going to partner with you. They're going to train your people, really train your people, because they're going to need them. Unlike Exxon-Mobil or Sinopec or whoever, they're actually going to need your people to work with you to get these projects done. And so, if again, start right now. And I say power poles. We looked at shipping power poles to West Africa, so I know there's some countries that need power poles. If it's power poles, if it's chicken feed, I don't know, whatever it is, start doing those deals. Once you start doing those, people are getting paid, the contracts are clear. Then brag about it. We did this. Everyone loves a winner. Who doesn't love a winner, right? And especially Americans, we love winners, right? And once we start hearing that this country is paying, they're doing it on time, and it's something that I can actually do, okay, well, guess what? I'm ready to go. I got passport. I'm ready to go. Make yourself available. So those are the things that they're very simple that can get a lot of progress done immediately. And um, I don't think people really understand, or we think in these, again, these grandiose terms. Once you start having these wins, you're going to attract other people because business people want to make money. I know it's shocking, but they want to make money. And if they know that they can make money in your country, they'll do it. And I'll wrap up with this.
Great.
Humanity has seen people take great risk. Okay, we've gone to the moon, we've gone across the ocean, we've gone to the bottom of the ocean, the top of the mountains. Why? Because they all believed that the reward was worth the risk. They believed that if they could accomplish their goal, that the reward would be there. Risk in international deals is really a myth. And here's why. If the investors believe that the reward is there, is tangible, if they do right things, they will get paid. The risk becomes minuscule. Think about that. We're willing to go to the bottom of the ocean, go to the moon. Why won't they invest in your country? Because the risk is there. They know the risk. If you remove the risk, okay, guess what? They'll fly. They'll take a little puddle jumper that's got one, it's got one prop working to get to your country to make money. Humans will take great risk if they believe the reward is there. You have to give the investors the belief, and not false belief, the real belief that they will make money. If they believe that, they will do anything to come work with you. They would love to work with you. That's what they do. One day, if there is someone who believes that he can land on the sun and not die, he will go do it because the reward for him of being the first person to land on the sun is the greatest thing ever. Working in Africa is not a problem. You have to let people believe that the reward is there, it's tangible, and it's something that they can get. Once they believe that, and it's true, and if they perform their end, that they're going to get it, you will have a problem. But you have to make that real to them. And I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. That very, very good dialogue. Thank you so much, Ryan. And it's great because obviously you're one of those people who you go on ground to assess the situation and to get to know the countries. And so I'm hopeful that this talk, as I share it broadly on YouTube and social media and so on, that both the African nations and the citizens who are looking to attract U.S. investors, that they change or modify how they reach out to the investors, and hopefully start to win. Start off by winning small and then growing and winning big. So very important conversation. I'm very grateful to you for your time and your expertise, sharing that with us. Do you want to say any final words before we end?
Well, thanks for having me. Obviously, I love your platform. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I've always been impressed by your work since I met you back in 2016 in Zambia. So
thank you, Ryan.
It's just an honor to be here. I don't know why you got me on here when you got you. You're far more the expert than I am. So I am honored to be here. And I'll just say this in closing. I love Africa, and for me, the basis, as I said before, is I've got a wife, I've got 4 kids, and right now there's someone in Africa, a lot of someone's in Africa who don't have access to the things that me and you have. I want to eliminate that as quick as possible. And I want to make money doing that. And I don't want to screw anyone in that process, right? I want to be fair. And we should celebrate that. When we celebrate that, guess what? And we can work on that. We can get a lot of things done. And so I'm hopeful, very hopeful. I'm very excited about Africa. I think the next 40 years, you're going to see, I get really frustrated when people talk about the lack of oil demand and how it's going away. That is a disgrace to what's going to happen in Africa, because I really believe for the next 40 years, we're going to see exponential growth there, like we have for the last 100 years. So anyways, I'll quit rambling now. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And maybe what I'll do one of these days is hold a summit with some of the people who are doing small projects in Africa, and have you and maybe some of your friends tune in and see which ones are attractive to you. We could try to make something like that work. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us, Ryan. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.